Good evening, everyone. I'm Catherine Morrison. I'm the Adult Services Manager here at the Scarborough Public Library, and I'm joined by my colleagues Lucy Norval, Nancy Kroll, and Tom Corbett. And we're very pleased to welcome Scarborough resident and author Jere Michelson to the library this evening. Jere was originally scheduled to speak in front of a live audience here at the library at the end of April, but we're glad that he's finally here at the library and that you're able to join us, albeit from home tonight. Like the protagonist in his first novel, Deadly Account, Jere has a background in accounting. He received his bachelor's degree in accounting from the University of Southern Maine, his master's degree in taxation from Thomas College, and until 2001, served as a member of the management group at accounting firm Baker, Newman & Noyes in Portland. He is now President, Chief Operating Officer, and Chief Financial Officer of Libra Foundation, a private philanthropic organization that awards millions of dollars in grants each year to charitable organizations in Maine. In addition, he is the chairman of Maine Medical Center and is trustee at Maine Health. So we're very anxious this evening to hear about your riveting novel of suspense and how you managed to find time to fit this into your very busy professional life. Please help me welcome remotely Jere Michelson to the library this evening.
Thank you, Catherine. I appreciate it. I'm sure you're all clapping at home, right?
Right.
Just thank you so much, Catherine. Just a couple housekeeping issues from my standpoint before we start. I love interaction. Sometimes these Zoom calls are difficult, but feel free. You can raise your hand. You can submit a question via chat. You can interrupt me if you'd like. I don't have an issue with any of that. I love the interaction, and I think it makes it more interesting and enjoyable for everyone. So here I am. You can see I've got a gun to my head, but I'm actually fully happy to participate without having that gun to my head. But I really like that one. I picked that one out special for the cover. But just an update to my bio. I finished my term as chairman of Maine Medical Center on September 30th.
Oh.
So that just happened. And there is a participant on the line, Kathy Coster, who is stepped into that role, and she'll do a great job as chairwoman of Maine Medical Center. But thank you again. So where do you want to start? Good Lord, how did I get this thing done? Let me start by saying why I did it, and then I'll get to the how and the when and all of that stuff in a moment. But the why is, so obviously I'm a CPA by trade. I'm an accountant, albeit I'm on the tax side, not the audit side. And for those of you that have read this book, you know that the main protagonist, John Williams, works on the audit side. Nothing against auditors. And I know there's at least one auditor on this call or on this tonight, so I won't bash auditors, but I was a tax guy. However, the story needs to be done by an auditor. But it was actually probably 5 or 6 years ago. I was thinking, boy, wouldn't that be interesting if an auditor was looking through someone's books and they found something that just wasn't right, and they dug in a little bit on it, and it turns out they just opened up a whole can of worms. And I put a couple of notes on paper just to capture some thoughts. But then I forgot about it. I just kind of let it, I didn't do really anything about it. And if anybody saw my expose on the main Channel 6 show 207, they know this story already. But there's a group of folks, a group of us that go on a fishing trip every year, and many of whom are on this chat tonight. And we were sitting around a fire at the lake, and we started talking about mysteries and crime fiction and true crime. And I was talking to an individual who was sitting next to me. His name is Chris Emmons. I think he's on this call. And you could see in the acknowledgments in the back of the book, I acknowledge him in that section. We were talking about it, and I was talking about the idea to him of what I had for a book, and he said, "Hey, that's kind of interesting. That sounds kind of neat." And so I kept that in the back of my head. And after the weekend was up and I got back to work, I sent him an email and I just attached some of the notes I had. I wouldn't even say it comprised the full chapter. But it was just a bunch of notes I had that I sent to him. And he said to me, he said, "Hey, I think you kind of got something here." And I was like, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah, why don't you just try to write 10 chapters? Write 10 chapters, and if you got something, go for it. If not, forget about it." So I'm like, huh, yeah, right, what the heck? So I sat down and I started writing it, and um, it came pouring out of me. It just came out like a flood. And I got to the 10th chapter, and I had the entire story arc in my head, and I wasn't going to stop on this one. And I had given him the 10 chapters to look at, and he enjoyed it. At least he said he enjoyed it. And even if he was lying to me, I appreciate that, because I just went all the way with the story, and Deadly Account is what came out of it. As far as when or how I managed to do it, I work full time. I'm father to these two wonderful kids that are on this call, Sydney and Ian, who I acknowledge in the dedication page as well as the acknowledgments. When I started to write this, my son was I think he was either in his freshman or sophomore. It was his sophomore year of college, so he was away. But my daughter, who is also, she's a sophomore in college now. She was a junior in high school, going to Cheverus High School here in Portland. And every night, she probably had just massive amounts of homework. It seemed like it was 2 and 3 hours of homework every night. And she would sit at the kitchen bar right here in Scarborough, Maine, and be on her laptop for 2 to 3 hours a night. And I would sit on the couch just keeping her company. And I had done that when she was a freshman and a sophomore. And finally, because when I started to write this story, I found that I had 2 to 3 hours every night to just peck away on a laptop while she was doing her homework, and it kept her company, it kept me company, and I really didn't have to carve out a lot of free time to do it, because in a way I was spending family time at the same time I was doing it. So it really worked out well. And it took me probably about a year and a half to do the book, which I thought wasn't too bad being a part-time writer. I know full-time writers, they strive oftentimes for a book a year. It seems to be that seems to be the timeline for full-time authors. So I thought that was pretty good. As far as the publishing piece, I started doing my research on that. By the way, you will be amazed if you haven't already figured this out. You will be amazed what you can learn from YouTube, honestly. To figure out how to publish this thing, I started doing all my research on how publishing houses work, how printers work, how distributors work, and I realized that I wanted to maintain total authority, total ownership over every aspect of this. I'm a part-time writer. I can afford to play the long game on this one. So I did all my research, and I started my own little publishing house myself. I control all the printing. I control all the distribution, from A to Z, as far as how this book, from word number one on page number one, all the way through getting this to Amazon and Barnes and Noble and Goodreads and you name it, for all of these outlets, as well as bookstores all over Maine. I'm in the Maine State Library System, obviously. So I learned how to do that. It took a lot of time, but I think it's totally worth it. So feel free to drop a few questions in here, even if they're softballs, so we can get everybody interacting here.
Well, you mentioned someone, sorry, helping you with editing in the acknowledgments. Was that a friend or a professional editor? Because since you did self-publish it, a lot of times the self-published books have a lot, need more editing, but yours was free of typos and really.
I think I don't there's not a single typo in there. Maybe some grammatical issues, but Yeah, it's a buddy of mine. He's one of my oldest and dearest friends. His name is Aaron Baltus. He's a partner in a law firm here in Portland. Um, he and I, when we got out of high school and during college, we were cooks in a restaurant together, and we worked our tails off, and doing dishes and cleaning frylators and scrubbing countertops down and working till 1 in the morning in the hot summers and putting ourselves through college and beyond. And we are still very close to this day. And he reviews all of my stuff. He critiques me. He pushes me, and I push back. And I think the end product, it really works out. He has a huge interest in seeing it successful. And I'm very, very thankful that he reviews all of my stuff. He comes up with some ideas as well, but doesn't press me too hard when I want to take some liberties with grammar and such, because I like the style and I like the way it looks better. So yeah, that's who I use for my copy edit and my proofing.
So
Good.
sorry, go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
Did someone have a question? I interrupted you. So before this, you hadn't done any writing before, or in college, that wasn't an interest to you, or this is just.
Well, look, I've done a ton of business writing.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily translate to crime fiction, although some would argue that there are a lot of business folks that fit in neatly to crime fiction. But I've done a ton of reading, obviously, but for me, I write every chapter, and I essentially read it, I reread it, and I don't consider it finished until it makes me smile when I'm done. If there's anything about the chapter that I read that it just doesn't strike me as right, I don't stop until it's done, so that it's very readable. And I hope you all agree that it's a page turner. I've got a couple questions here, Catherine, that I'll take, if that's okay.
Okay.
This one is from an individual that I kind of know. Her name is Jere Michelson. She says, "Do we get the inside scoop on if a second book is happening?" Yes, you do get the inside scoop, and you may or may not be aware of this, but the second book is about 2/3 of the way done, and it is a follow-up to Deadly Account. The intent of this series is to be a trilogy. There'll be a three book series. Like I said, the second book is about 2/3 of the way done. I love Deadly Account, but I love this one. I love it even more. I mean, you love all your children, but this one here, I think this one blows the first one right out of the water. And it does pick up exactly where Deadly Account left off. And I printed off a piece of chapter 1. Eventually I'd like to read that to you. So for those of you that read Deadly Account, I think you'll get a kick out of chapter 1 in the second book. Nancy, I appreciate your question that you just sent. You said, "Are most of your characters based at least loosely on people you know?" The answer is a resounding yes. But it could also be, I should qualify that statement. I won't disclose who in the characters in the book, who they are in real life. But look, we write what we experience, right? You write what you know, and you know what you know from your life, right? From your experience, from the people around you. So yeah, I borrow from people I know, in personalities, in basically anything. But I will also say that there are characters in here that are also they're a compilation of multiple people. And I'll give you an example without telling you who the people are. Harold Osterman is the chief operating officer of Harding Williams. He's the combination of two people, both from his personality and then his personal appearance. They're two different people that are squeezed together. I have another question. Thank you, Arlene Nickerson. She says, or asks, "Are there any truths in Deadly Account?" Arlene, there are many, many truths in Deadly Account. There are real experiences in Deadly Account. I'll let you guess which experiences are real and which are made up. There are certainly some embellished experiences. There are many truths in Deadly Account, and there are many things that I just, obviously just put it in there to fit it in, and I just like how it reads. I think I tried to. There are a couple fictitious places in the book, but I tried to capture a lot of places in Portland that all you folks will know, particularly down on the waterfront. If you spent any time downtown in Portland, you can pick out, what I'm talking about. Basically, in the wharf area, you'll be able to tell a lot of the places that I'm talking about, and the buildings actually. Obviously, chapter 1 starts off with a serious event, and you can all picture exactly where that complex is. In fact, it's the complex in which I work in. So, again, going back to what I said to Nancy, you write about what you know, right? Okay, here come the questions. They're rolling in. Chris writes, he says, "Hi, Jere, congrats on your first novel," capitalize the word first. "It was a quick read, rich with detail and humor, and fun to know several of the scene settings. Can you share how many books are in circulation and what your expectations were going into this?" Yes, I absolutely can do that. I think I have about 1,000 books in circulation right now. And that's with really very, very little marketing effort. And I'll talk about that in a second, where I'm going with that. But expectations going into this. It's morphed over time, right? So when I first started this, I thought, hey, I have a really cool idea, and I want to see if I can kind of lay this out and make some sense out of it. And then, as I said earlier, it really started to flow out of me, and I kind of got excited that I'm like, wow, I'm weaving in a lot of different action lines here, and they're actually really tying together. I'm really liking this. So then I thought, I wonder if I can make a book. I wonder if I could actually truly create a book and have this object in my hand. And so I got done with the first draft, and boy, I didn't know what I got myself into, because when it came time to proof this thing and revise it, and I've read this book 100 times, and I'm not kidding when I say that. Just revision after revision after revision. I have a stack of books this high in my home, just finished books, just revised and reread and revised and reread it over and over and over again. And it's almost like the reading is, I mean, the writing piece, you get that done, and it's like, all right, now you're going to start, making a book here. So I got to the point where I said, all right, I want to have this completed book in my hand. And then I researched how to do that. I did all the work behind it, all the graphic design, all the templates for the covers, all the compilation of everything together. And then this book, this final book, appeared in the mail. And I thought, oh my Lord, I did it. And then I'm like, wait a minute. I personally think I have something really, really good here. I'm gonna get this to market. I'm gonna give this a shot. So that was my next expectation. And now I'll get to my third expectation. I said I haven't done much on the marketing front, but I've got really, really good outlets. But the marketing piece is where it's at, obviously. When I finish the second book, I'm going to package these together, and I am giving this as hard and determined a shot as I possibly can for a national audience. I like to make efforts on, and I'm going for the moon here. And it may sound crazy, it may sound far fetched. I never thought I would even do this piece, but I'm going to try to get this nationally. I'm going to try to get this. I've written every chapter in both of these books such that they can be translated to a scene in a movie. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to give it everything I've got to make this truly happen. And I'll have no regrets at the end of the day, no matter where I end up with this. Okay. And that's it. That's what you do, right? If you can't dream big, if you can't go for it, why bother? Why are you doing it, right? So I'm really excited about it, and I'll be satisfied no matter what happens. I mean, every book I sell from here forward is actually making money. So I mean, you know, why not, right? Um, so that answers your question, Chris, on books in circulation, and not only expectations going into this, but expectations on the back end of this, right? Um, Jack Moore says, hi, Jack, how are you? Can you name an experience that inspired an event in the book? Um, which one, Jack? um, yeah, let me think about that because I don't want to get myself into trouble on that one. But let me go to the next question, Jack, and I'll come back to that one. I promise you. Who are some of your favorite authors? Who do you draw from most for your writing? Oh, I appreciate this question, and I didn't ask for this to be a softball, but if you look in the book, and some of you may find this really odd, obviously, this book is a guilty read, and one of my guilty authors is John Grisham. Obviously, he does this on the legal side. So I do draw. I've always been drawn to that piece with him. My favorite author has really nothing to do with crime fiction, or maybe it does. Maybe you could link it. And I have a nod to this author in the book. And if you read the book, I don't want to give away, stuff for those that haven't read it. But the protagonist is John Williams. His name is John Kerouac Williams, and his mother, much to John's chagrin, always called him JK because John Kerouac, his dad's name is John, and to differentiate him from Big John, instead of calling him Little John, his mom called him JK. And that's a nod to J.K. Rowling, who is my favorite author with the Harry Potter series. I think she is amazing. I'm captivated by those books. I always have been, and I'm captivated by the movies. And anytime there's a marathon on for Harry Potter, I'm watching it from start to finish. I've seen every movie. I can't even tell you how many times, but I really do like J.K. Rowling. And where I get a lot of inspiration as well isn't so much from an author. I listen to a lot of crime podcasts. I'm listening to crime podcasts all the time. And I never really set out to do that. It just kind of happened. I just kind of morphed into it where it seems like every time I'm in my car, I've got, either true crime or Up and Vanished or 48 Hours or whatever. I've got some of those podcasts playing. All right, next question. Nancy, thank you. Have any of your friends recognized themselves in your book? I don't know that I would say friends have recognized themselves, but my brother has he's recognized himself in the book in some capacity. He's always been a partner in crime of mine when we were growing up. We were little. So my brother has, and then there are a lot of people out there. This is kind of on the same line as that, but there are a lot of people who will tell me when they read the book, they can hear me while they read it, because obviously I'm speaking through John. But they say they just hear my voice, and those that really know me and know my mannerisms and stuff, they can tell, what's going on in my life vis-a-vis with that. I have an old friend who, well, look, I'll go, John, Jack Moore, I'll go back to your question. Can you name an experience that inspired an event in this book? If you read the section on when, this is a little bit hard. There's a section where John is with his dad, and John's mom leaves, and John says in the book, he says, I watched the back of my mom's head go out the door and listen to the door shut with a rusty clang. And I'm paraphrasing here. He says, I looked at my dad and I didn't know what to say. And I said, do you want to go bowling? And, my dad said, no, not really right now. That's completely true. And that's me as John right there. That scene in the book that's very true. That's exactly what happened in my home when I was 12 years old or 11 years old. I watched my mom leave, and I remember that door clanging, shut the sound of that door clanging. And I looked at my dad and I was like, I didn't really know what was happening. I looked at him and I said, you want to go bowling? And he said, Jere, I really don't feel like it today. And I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't really get it at the time, but so I wrote that in there. There's another section there about a Snoopy phone. It's Snoopy in Woodstock, and his arm is sticking out, and that was the cradle for the phone. My father actually had that phone, so that was a really neat kind of thing that I wrote into the book. Okay. What Ian Michelson? What goes into the decision process for killing off major characters? Well, it's twofold. Some of them I go into this knowing they're going to die, and sorry, but you ain't going to make it. And there are a couple of times though, where as I've been writing it, the arc of the story, I realize, oh man, they got to die. They have to die. Sorry. And then, sometimes I know it, and other times it's like, oh yeah, you're not going to make it. I apologize for that, but you got to go. And I remember listening to a interview of J.K. Rowling when she was talking about that. In the Harry Potter series, when Snape, when she realized that Snape with the Elder Wand, he had to be the one, that had to go, as part of that whole deal. So yeah, that's what goes into it. Sometimes I know it, and other times it's, it just goes that direction. Library host has asked if I could read some excerpts, and I will. I want to read 3 excerpts from 3 different chapters of the book that I have here. And I also want, like I said, I want to read, I'll tell you a little bit about the new book and where we're going with that. And excuse me for a moment, I'm looking at an outline that I have just to make sure I make sure. Oh yeah, I wanted to say this. There's 2 things that I wanted to say on the approach to writing. When I'm actually writing a scene, and I said earlier, it doesn't stop until I'm happy with it. But what I do when I approach that is, honestly, I transform myself into the room like I'm invisible, and I'm literally just writing down the conversation that I hear in my head from observing the people that are in the room. I'm like, what would John say here? Knowing his personality, knowing what he's kind of a smart aleck, and Allison's not going to take any crap from him, but it's good natured, and she'll go right back at him and put him in his place because he thinks he's, this real funny, hip kid, but he's really, as you see John in the beginning of the book, he's really kind of, in a way, he's grown up faster than he should, but he's also really immature. But as we get along in the story, he really grows during this story. I mean, John is like he's like an immature college kid, but then he grows up very quickly. This is a crime fiction story. I'm going to digress just a little bit. It is crime fiction. There is action. There is a lot of, chasing scenes. But honestly, in my mind, this is it's a love story. It's a love story with John and Allison. It's a story of family redemption, to a great degree. And then it's got that grab him by the the hair, action scenes with crime, with crime as well. But again, I transform into an invisible person in the room, and I just watch, what in my mind, what they're saying. And sometimes sometimes I laugh out loud. I really do, when I'm writing it. And I kind of hope you all laugh out loud too when you're reading some of these parts. As far as the ideas that I get, there's really 3 places that it comes from, or where I get inspired. One is when I'm driving, when I'm in the car and I'm driving, particularly long distances. Um, these things are popping into my head, you know. My son just graduated from Providence College. My daughter goes to Providence College right now, and over the last years, I've been back and forth there all the time, and so I'm thinking about this stuff all the time in the book. The second place is when I'm in the gym. I enjoy going to the gym. Um, for all you Scarborough people, shout out to Mike Foley at Foley's Fitness here in Scarborough. Check it out if you get a chance. Great place to go. But when I'm in the gym, my mind is I'm a pacer. I pace. So when I'm in the gym, I'm thinking about that stuff. I'm looking at people in the gym and I'm seeing all these different personalities. And I'm a people watcher. I have a people watcher chapter in Deadly Account where I'm in a breakfast place and I'm just psychoanalyzing everybody in there, just basically, just being a people watcher. And I do that in the gym. I love that. And the third place that I get a lot of inspiration is actually during the writing process. And that goes back to Ian's question about how do I decide when I kill people, kill them off. It's like as I'm writing, these things are just popping in my head as I'm writing that the story arc takes me. And so that's how I kind of figure that piece out. Let's see, Eric, how did you know when the revision process was complete? When you hit print, was there anything you wanted to go back and change after the fact? Let me answer your second question first. When I hit print, there was nothing left I ever wanted to go back to change after the fact. I was done, man. I was so tired of revising this thing. It was like, get this out of me. I'm done. I need to get this thing going. But luckily I had, a good copy editor proofer. I was confident. I went line by line, 58 chapters, 360 some odd pages. I went line by line with a ruler and read this thing without reading it. Meaning I looked at every word without reading it, but looking for typo, looking for punctuation, looking for a missed period, looking for a missed end quote, comma versus semicolon. Every single word, this entire thing. And I was very, very confident. And I've read it back. I've had everyone who's read it to me. I haven't had anybody point out a typo or mispunctuation yet. And you do see that from time to time, right? Even in established professional authors, sometimes you see mistakes, and nobody's perfect. But if you do find one in Deadly Account, I don't want to know about it. Just keep it to yourself. Forget it. I'm hoping you're not going to find one. But I don't want to know. So Eric, the answer is when I hit print. Don't look back. You're just going to drive yourself crazy. How did I know when the revision process was complete? Like I said before, I don't consider a chapter done until I read every word and I can smile and be like, I actually enjoyed reading that myself. Obviously you have chapters that are connectors from one segment to another, and they're not action packed with adventure, but they're set up chapters to get to a more intense chapter. But I've got to like it. I've got to be able to smile at it, and I've got to be able to enjoy it, or else it's not done, period. And I won't finish until it is done. So that's that on the revision process. Miss Openshaw says, some might say we CPAs, so there's our auditor, Lisa. And by the way, in my second book, I've tapped into Lisa's expertise for some guidance, and you'll see that in the acknowledgments when the second book comes out. But Lisa says, some might say we CPAs are not creative by nature. So have you always been successful at or drawn to writing? Well, I don't know if I've been successful at writing yet. I was successful in writing a book, but we'll see where it goes from there. The answer is no. I mean, I have a lot of interest, and I liked it, and so I gave it a shot. I am absolutely drawn to writing now, for sure. I mean, it's just, and so let me put it this way that a CPA can understand. We're always focused on deliverables, right? Delivering the audit report, delivering a tax return, right? You have a tangible thing in your hand that you can hold on to that you made and that you have to deliver. And that kind of scratches that itch with the book as well. So it's like I have this deliverable in my hand. Um, I, you know, I don't know. I mean, we all have, as far as being creative, um, you know, am I creative? I don't know. I like the book. I hope you like it too. Um, so I guess I haven't always been successful, but hopefully I will. Um, Question is, when will Deadly Account be a movie? I'm telling you, I'm going to push like heck to make this happen. When I have the second one together, I'm going to take a little break before I start the third one. Though I have that one kind of mapped out in my head. I've got it mapped out how it starts and how it finishes. I'll just have to bridge that. But I'm going to take a break from that and really, really push these through and try to make this happen. Question. Oh, excuse me. I got to try to scroll down here. All right. Okay, can you describe how the overarching evil plot came together? Was it decided early on, or was it pieced together as the story was written? It was both. Okay, so I had the overarching story um, in an immature, juvenile kind of way, right? I knew what I wanted to. I knew I wanted an audit individual to find stuff going on that was bad. I wanted him to get in trouble, have to fight for his life. As far as the family and the love story, that developed as we went along, and I loved it. To me, it just fell into place. It makes so much sense how that interaction develops, and it's a perfect juxtaposition of John and Allison, how their life develops in the wake of what happened to John with his parents growing up. And it shapes who he is and why he fights so hard, for what he has right now. As far as the actual climactic ending piece, that I had, kind of scratched out, but it absolutely changed as I got to the end, where I was like, holy moly, um, I I got this. This is going to be really a shocker, to people that are reading it. And honestly, in my mind, I could see this playing out in a movie on a big screen. I really could. But that's me and it's mine. So of course I'm going to feel that way. But again, I'll give it the best shot that I can. Okay. Uh, let me hold off on this question here. Let me read a couple things from you from the book. It's 7:15. I've been allotted an hour, so I think we can probably pull this off. But let me. I'm going to read. So forgive me as I look down because I'm going to be reading from a few passages. This is from chapter 11 of the book. This is chapter 11. If you're looking at the soft cover, it's page 47. And what this is obviously it's close to the beginning of the book. It's after the big event happens to the accounting firm, and it's the first gathering of all of the accounting firm staff to discuss how they're going to go forward and how they're going to activate their continuity of operations plan, which is like the emergency plan that all respectable firms have to get back up and running after a really catastrophic event. So this is John entering the auditorium. As we enter the building, you can feel the emotion hanging in the air. Sadness permeates everywhere as our coworkers begin ambling into the auditorium. We take seats in the back. A panel of people sits in chairs on the stage, including Calvin Harding, the managing principal of the firm. Julie, our human resources director, sits next to him, as does our chief operating officer. Muted conversation drifts throughout the room with no real intelligibility. just the indistinct murmur of a crowd. Calvin stands up and slowly approaches the lectern, generating a sweeping hush over the room. Everyone, he begins slowly and softly, thank you for coming here today. My intent is to pay tribute to those we so senselessly lost and those still suffering. Not only those from our family, but also those within our building, our larger community. We are all suffering. I can see two large portraits propped up on easels. They are of Roger and Sarah. Harding Williams is dead. Calvin reminds me of William Shatner as James T. Kirk from Star Trek. He uses gel product in his hair, giving him the late 60s slick-backed wet look, and has an eerily similar stunted cadence to his speech pattern. I'm struggling to remain focused on the substance of his tribute to Roger and Sarah. I find myself wanting to hear him press Scotty for more power, only to learn he's given it all she's got, Captain. I smile at the thought, only to be brought back to the moment by the booming voice of our Chief Operating Officer, Harold Osterman. Apparently, I drifted off on my Star Trek voyage where no man has gone before for a smidge too long. Calvin had completed his tribute and turned the meeting over to Harold for the operations portion. Harold's stature does not reflect the commanding nature of his voice. He has thinning brown hair coupled with wispy baby hairs that are propped up and seemingly defy gravity. It's as though someone rubbed a helium balloon alongside his head and the generation of static electricity caused a follicle free-for-all. Harold's been around the block on this kind of stuff. He knows the ins and outs of this company probably better than anyone. So I read that just to give you a sense of how I describe characters and give you a sense of how John sees the world, where he's a little bit absent-minded, and he kind of laughs a little bit and thinks about funny things, even in the face of something so solemn as a tribute to individuals that didn't make it through the accounting firm's tragedy. Let me read chapter 23 from the softcover anyway. So Allison is trying to get into a storage facility to see if an individual character early on had left money in there for her. And she's struggling to get into this facility. And it's it kind of gives you a sense of the Keystone Cop nature of what's going on with these folks. The storage building is actually quite modern, unsophisticated name notwithstanding. It's a block-style, multi-tiered, climate-controlled facility with what appears to be impressive security and surveillance. How do we get in, Danny asks. We have a keypad code. It was in Bob's letter, I respond. Allison steps ahead to the access door and enters the code 1113. She pulls the handle and nothing. Her hand wrenches off of the handle unexpectedly, jarring her fingers in the process. Damn it, she winces, waggling her hand. Let me try, I offer as I press forward. 1113. I count off as I key it in. I tug on the door, and as before, it doesn't move. Look at the units inside, Santa observes through the window. There are keypads next to each of them. There's a different code to get into the building than what's on the unit. Great. What the hell's the code to get in the building? Allison, what's the code to get inside? Mary asks, mind reading me. I don't know, she mumbles while retrieving Bob's letter. He only referred to our first date, which was on Friday the 13th. As an aside, it was November 13th, so he was using the date 1113. She paused through the letter seemingly for the better part of the next half an hour, and we see no other mention of a code. There's some serious security here, I say, pointing to the cameras positioned intermittently throughout the property. We can't stay here. We're going to draw some unwanted attention at some point. Why don't we get dinner while we're out this way and figure out our next move, Santa suggests. I'm hungry. You're always hungry, Mary counters. I'm in, Danny snaps. That settles it. We're going to dinner. We decide on Larson's for dinner. It's a mall chain steakhouse, but the food is pretty good and the beers are ice cold. Santa eats like a friggin' horse and Mary rides him on it like a seasoned cowgirl. Christ, Ben, you're making me nauseous just watching you. We must make an interesting picture to the rest of the patrons. Santa smiles with a mouthful of mashed potatoes while Mary chastises him. Allison is distant, presumably racking her brain trying to see where she went wrong with the code. Danny's kind of quiet, pretty much minding his own business, and I'm doing my routine psychoanalytical judgment on everyone. We met with Detective Bond again, I direct to Santa. He looks up, but before he responds, I give him the details. He knows Bob was in a scam at HW and Allison worked on the account. He got an unsolicited anonymous tip. Not sure how detailed the tip was, but he's pretty intuitive as to what's happening. Uh, Spoiler alert. Close your ears here if you don't want to hear it. He knows Bob was dead before the house burned, but not if it was a suicide or a homicide. He got access to the autopsy report. Added to that, he believes the bombing and Bob and all of us are related. All of us? What does he know about Mary and I? Santa asked concernedly. Mary and me, dude, object of the preposition, and not much. I can't help but be a dick with the grammar thing, and I'm tired of recounting the story. We didn't share the letter with him. We weren't comfortable doing much of anything until we talked to Danny. Santa responds indignantly, screw you and your object of the preposition. I got it, Allison suddenly roars, vaulting up from her seat. She jars the table hard enough to knock over her water glass and scare the living crap out of the rest of us. I got it, she repeats breathlessly. We went on 2 first dates. When Bob asked me out, he asked me out on 2 first dates. He said the time between the first and second date was excruciating. Should I call? Should I text? Am I getting mixed messages? He thought people needed 2 dates to decide whether or not there's a connection worth continuing. He called them 2 first dates. How could I have not pieced this together sooner? She goes on. He asked me out for Friday the 13th, 1113, but he also asked me out for that following Sunday at the same time, 1115. We need to go. We clear the bill, gather our stuff, and head for the door, all in record time. I have to stop and pee again because I've chugged a couple more beers since leaving Danny's. Allison is super annoyed at having to wait for me, but what are you going to do? 1115. Allison slowly verbalizes each number as she punches them into the keypad. The green light activates, and we hear a distinct click sound indicating the door is unlocked. Allison opens it up, and we all push feverishly in as if at any moment the door will change its mind and relock before we can enter. There's no one around. The facility has 24-hour access, and at 7:30 on a Saturday night, no one's here. So that's when they go to the facility, and again, that's an example of setting up a chapter to get to a much greater excitement. Yet it's cute. It gives you a real look inside, how these characters relate to one of us, to one another. And let me read the last one. This one's shorter, and then I think I got a bunch more questions here to ask. This is chapter 51. John gets out of the hospital, and they've just finished the funeral service. Yo, Lozo, let's roll. Yeah, I'm coming, Enzo says, exiting the bedroom. Come on, Lozo, really? I thought about just going with Zoe, but Lozo has a stronger flow. Whatever, let's go. He's putting up a good-natured affront, but I think he might secretly like it, or maybe not so secretly. I bet if I say that to my mother, she'll roll with it. I heard that, Mom calls out from the bedroom. I love it. See you soon, Lozo. Enzo rolls his eyes and walks out of the door. As we pull up to Allison's apartment complex, Enzo asks where he should park. There's a visitor's lot out back. Can't say I've used it, though. This is the first time I'm coming here without sneaking around. Fine, let's deal with her car first while we're down here at the garage. He grabs his duffel bag, no doubt containing his detection wand. Do you know where it's parked? Yeah, it's the white Fiat, right there. I point to the car. I see why you call it a Tic Tac. We walk over and I hand him the keys. He unlocks the car and awkwardly slides into the tiny front seat. My ribs are still bothering me. He adjusts the driver's seat back as far as it will go and begins the scanning process. I like watching this segment of Enzo's skill set, the James Bond espionage spy stuff. He completes a general inside scan and progresses to a more comprehensive inspection. The steering wheel column gets a wand pass, as does the glove box interior, underneath the seats, door frames, you name it. I break spaces down into quadrants to ensure I don't miss anything, Enzo says, unsolicited. I cover every surface similar to painting a wall, or in this case, a tight space. I imagine a forensics analyst works much in the same fashion. Enzo completes his interior review and moves on to the exterior. He plunks down to his knees to work on the underbody and immediately receives a positive indicator beneath the driver's side door. He reaches under, pinpoints the source, and after a brief effort, pops a hockey puck-sized device from the frame. We got a hit. What is it? GPS tracking device. The user on the other end will know exactly where this vehicle is at all times. When's the last time you used it? Not since before I had Danny's Jeep. We fully expected there to be something on Allison's car. Enzo walks over to a FedEx delivery truck parked some 40 yards away and tucks it into a wheel well. Are you trying to throw someone off of our trail? I thought you said no one's monitoring us anymore. That's what I said, and I stand by it. I just think it's funny for when the FedEx fleet maintenance workers find it and get all worked up that someone might be tracking them. Gangster humor. Enzo concludes his inspection with the underside, exterior panels, and engine compartment. We're good to go, he says. Great, so maybe I should bring a load of stuff up with us from your car. So that's a little bit of a good banter between John and Enzo, and lets you see how the family component comes back together, like intertwined with the fact that they're pulling GPS trackers from, ne'er-do-wells off their car, with this kind of gangster person. Okay, a few more questions. This is from Chris. Does Ian or Sydney have any, or do Ian and Sydney have any interest in writing and following up in your success? I honestly can't tell you what Sydney would feel about that question, but I know Ian has a lot of interest in writing, and in fact has started his process. Though he's got a parallel track going too. He's finished his undergrad and he's working in a law firm, getting ready for law school here soon. But he also has a keen interest in writing as well. Have you had any experience with white collar criminals or other criminals? As far as white collar criminals go, I'm absolutely sure I have, though I just don't know who they are. But undoubtedly, I have come into contact with them. There are some that I suspect could be or have been. The question also says, or other criminals. I plead the fifth on that second piece. I think I will politely decline to answer that one, but you can read between the lines on that. Sydney said, okay, so Sydney did respond to that question, actually. She says, in relation to the question about me and Ian, I have definitely discovered that science is my strong suit. English and writing, on the other hand, not so much. I would love to be able to follow up on success, but the bar is definitely high. I know Ian is very talented in reading and writing, and it would be really neat to see him write a book as well. Sydney, that is incredibly sweet of you to say that. And now, okay, so Ian responded too. I'm seeing it right now. He says, I've got a couple of lines jotted down for a book and some pretty extensive notes. It'd certainly be great to have our books side by side. Yes, it would. It would indeed. My most exciting piece right now from my book is that if you go into Bar Harbor at Sherman's bookstore, you'll see my book in the front window side by side with Stephen King's. That's kind of neat. Just a nod to the main authors. Big shoes to fill, right? So that takes us to the sneak peek of the second book. So the second book, wow, 7:28. This is really, timing is pretty solid here. So the second book is called The Dispensary. I'm not going to tell you why it's called The Dispensary, but it does pick up right where Deadly Account leaves off. There are 3 recurring characters in The Dispensary. Enzo, Allison, and John are core, and they will be core in the third book. Excuse me. But there are a lot of new characters coming in, a lot of really cool characters. And there are some cameos from the first book too, here and there. But primarily there's 3 core individuals and then a whole new cast of characters, which is kind of neat. So if you recall, I don't want to give away for those that didn't read, but Deadly Account ends with John and Enzo having a conversation with one another about how they are going to handle some ill-gotten money and how they're going to put that to work. And so you can just imagine what the conversation is. But in the beginning of Deadly Account, Enzo was the individual that married John's mom after she left, and John did not like Enzo. John resented his mother at the beginning of Deadly Account. However, again, this is a family story, and family bonds become hugely, hugely important for John in this book. And so I'm going to read from you a couple of pages from chapter 1, or not quite 2 pages from chapter 1. And it's basically, it kind of recaps a little of the Deadly account, but it lets you know what John's mindset is going forward. Okay, chapter 1, page 1. Inside the mind of a criminal. If you asked me to describe what I thought that looked like a year ago, I would have given you a wholly different response than today. I was of the mind a criminal possesses stereotypical socio or psychopathic tendencies and likely lacks a conscience. And while those may be valid assumptions, I've learned firsthand there can be so much more there. Lorenzo Garibaldi, or Enzo as we call him, changed how I view the world and who I have become. Man, the degree to which I cared about Enzo, and my mom for that matter, couldn't have possibly been any lower prior to our reunion a little over a year ago. I would rather have shit in my hands and clapped than to have reconnected with either of them over the dozen+ years following my parents' divorce. That is, until they came thundering back into my life. And boy, did they come thundering. After mom walked out on my father just as I entered junior high school, I thought she and Enzo simply disappeared. What I didn't know, but subsequently discovered, was they were both a big part of my life behind the scenes, helping to support me through my Uncle Danny after Dad died. Spoiler alert, just to let you know. Now Danny and Mom are gone too. God, I miss them all. Sure, Enzo's a criminal, make no mistake, but he harbors an inexplicable level of humanity within him. He cares deeply for those he loves, conducting himself with grace and a captivating gentleness. I bore witness to a level of patience and pure, unadulterated love he exhibited for my mother that one couldn't help but respect. So, after a year or so of what he describes as forced healing and self-reflection, Enzo came back to visit us. Allison and I met up with him tonight at Asbury's for dinner. She was pretty pumped up when I called her this afternoon from work to let her know he's in town. The three of us sit at a high-top table with our drinks, waiting for our server to come by and take our order. I'm content to simply watch Enzo and Allison chat about nothing, really. He wears a white and black Fila tracksuit, a gold necklace with a pendant I can't quite make out, and a matching gold bracelet. Vintage Enzo. I take a slug from my Pabst Blue Ribbon while he carries on with her effortlessly, seemingly without a care in the world. I know better, though. He still positions himself with his back to the nearby wall, a prime vantage point to see everyone within the room. I'd bet a day's pay he parked his vehicle as close to the front door as possible for ease of visibility and exit. Old habits die hard. Old gangster habits die harder and more painfully. So that's the beginning of the dispensary. When Allison, John, and Enzo all get back together. Okay. For Nancy Crowell here at the library. Ian, your book will be first on the shelf because they are shelved alphabetically by author in the fiction section. And Ian says, haha, I love to hear it, Nancy. Wonderful. Well, folks, we got 7:33. Yeah. I think that's all I have, unless I didn't cover something you all wanted to hear, but I don't see any more questions, and I think we're there.
Yeah.
I'd like to say thank you all so much. Like I said in the back of the book, thank you, dear reader. This means nothing without you folks reading it. And I got great joy out of it, and I hope you do too. Catherine, I think I'll swing back to you.
Right. Well, thank you, Jere, so much for sharing your book and giving us a sneak peek of the next book. Now I see why the lead character made the choices that he did, knowing that you have a sequel planned. Yeah. So we hope that when you have your second book out, you'll come back to the library. We hope that we'll have a room full of people to enjoy your next author talk, but otherwise we'll gladly do it on Zoom as well. So please let us know when that next book comes out. And thank you to everyone who came tonight and had great questions for Jere. And we look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.
See you. I think I'll
Yeah.
swing back to you.
Right. Well, thank you, Jerry, so much for sharing your book and giving us a sneak peek of the next book. Now I see why the lead character made the choices that he did, knowing that you have a sequel planned.
Yeah.
So we hope that when you have your second book out, you'll come back to the library. We hope that we'll have a room full of people to enjoy your next author talk, but otherwise we'll gladly do it on Zoom as well. So please let us know when that next book comes out. And thank you to everyone who came tonight and had great questions for Jerry. And we look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.
See you. Bye all.